rise to speak about the official launch of the history of St Luke's Anglican Church in Liverpool last Sunday. The book is entitled Yesterday, Today and Tomorrow and written by Dr Brian Cowling, who seems to have devoted the first 3 years of his retirement to the project. The effort seems to have been well worthwhile. The launch at St Luke's featured, amongst others, Dr Cowling, Stuart Pearson, Senior Minister of St Luke's, Peter Lynch, Bishop of Georges River, Liverpool Mayor Wendy Waller, and Dr Peter Bolt as MC, himself an author of several books relevant to Liverpool's early colonial history. The publication of this history is important for the parish. It's also important more generally for Liverpool because of the parish's long-term significance. The book launch, I note, was on the 201st anniversary of the church. The formal European establishment of Liverpool was in 1810 by Lachlan Macquarie, although there were certainly Europeans living in the area before then, including Michael Dwyer and the Tellicherry Fire from 1806. And of course the traditional owners had been living there for millennia. In 1810, Macquarie also allocated land for the church that became St Luke's. Macquarie chose as the architect Francis Greenway, that quarrelsome, troublesome and brilliant figure. Greenway was born in Bristol in 1777. At the age of 35 years, he was convicted of forgery. His death sentence was commuted to 14 years transportation. Some think he also designed what is now Liverpool TAFE that used to be the Liverpool Asylum. St Luke's is described as, quote, a restrained but dignified early colonial church in the Georgian tradition, constructed of sandstock bricks on a sandstock foundation, end quote. Dr Cowling notes that even Commissioner Thomas Bigg praised Greenway's work in Liverpool. It's one of the few positive things said about the guy who did such a job on Macquarie. Macquarie laid the corner foundation stone of the church on 7 April 1818. At the same time, he named the church. The original building contract was awarded to Nathaniel Lucas. He came to Botany Bay on the First Fleet, sentenced in 1784 to 7 years for stealing clothing. Greenway and Lucas had multiple arguments. At the 1818 ceremony to lay the foundation stone, the Greenway-Lucas dispute became so loud and noticeable that Macquarie couldn't finish his speech. Lucas died 6 days later. It was widely thought he had drowned himself following this public embarrassment. The contract then was awarded to James Smith, with whom Greenway also argued. Partially arising from that, Smith was forced into bankruptcy. Dr Cowling also records that the Bell and Clock Tower construction witnessed a convict workman hanging himself, and 3 others were killed when lightning struck them when they sheltered in the partially complete towers. All this helps explain why the building wasn't completed until 1824. Services were held, however, in the unfinished building from 1819 on the initiative of the Reverend Robert Cartwright. Previous services had been conducted by the Reverend Samuel Marsden and the Reverend John Yule. Marsden's a well-known and polarising figure, the subject of studies including by A.T. Yarwood and Peter Bolt, which I've read. Cartwright is not as well known as Marsden, but is a really quite interesting figure in his own right. Dr Cowling's history provides a fascinating portrait of him. A suburb in my electorate was named after him. The church building and the nearby Blackett Hall were added to the Register of the National Estate in March 1978. The buildings were assigned a permanent conservation order in February 1982, and they were added to the State Heritage Register in April 1999. Robert Cartwright was not the only interesting figure at St Luke's in early colonial times, or indeed at other times. 2 other people are Thomas and Rachel Moore, early parishioners at St Luke's. Once again, Peter Bolt's written about them. Thomas Moore was born in England in 1762. He arrived as a carpenter in 1792 and settled in Sydney in 1796 and was appointed master boat builder. He built a residence on the Georges River in 1809 and called it Moorebank. The next year, the Moores hosted Macquarie, who stayed with them at Moorebank. He acted as supervisor of public works in Liverpool and as a magistrate. He was a major landowner and benefactor. Thomas and Rachel were appointed guardians in 1814 of Lachlan Macquarie's son, should anything happen to the parents while in the colony. In 1817, Thomas was a founding member of the Bible Society in Australia and the Bank of New South Wales. Rachel Turner was also born in 1762, but her path to the colony was a different one to that of Thomas. In 1787, she was sentenced to 7 years transportation and arrived on the Lady Juliana in 1790. She was assigned to Surgeon John White and had a son, Andrew, with him. White returned to England, leaving Rachel and 18-month-old Andrew behind in 1794. In 1797, Thomas and Rachel married. They raised Andrew as their child. He was educated in England, joined the army and was, as far as is known, the only officer born in Australia to have fought at Waterloo. In 1838, Rachel died. In 1840, Thomas died shortly after having donated the land in George Street, Sydney for St Andrew's Cathedral. After his death, his entire estate went to the Anglican Church. He was one of the richest persons in the state at that stage. His estate established Moore College in Liverpool in 1856. In 1889, it was relocated to Newtown, where it continues to this day as Moore Theological College. My electorate college is located in Moore Street in a building called Moore House. Part of Liverpool Hospital is known as the Thomas and Rachel Moore Education Centre. Whilst I've mentioned here only early colonial items, the book is very much broader than that. It's also, I might add, a very enjoyable and interesting read. It's an important addition to the history of Liverpool. It helps the community of Liverpool know more about itself. Congratulations are due both to the parish of St Luke's and to Dr Brian Cowling.